happen is there needs to be a unifying strategy, and not wishing to hark back to my old world of delivering mission command inside of FTSE 100 companies, but the clear mission that would unify this effort across all these different players, all of whom I respect in different ways, to take political power by 2029 in order to restore Britain. That one line would unify all the effort that's currently being expended in a competitive way, right? All the effort right now is being expended with people beating each other up, competing for space, competing for the headline, falling out with each other, friction everywhere. It's not necessary. Take political power by 2029 in order to restore Britain.
Now, breaking right now, a bombshell More in Common poll shows the support for Slippery Starmer's failed government plummeting just 100 days since his election. Labour on 29%, the Tories 18%, the Tories 28%, Reform 19%, Lib Dems 11%, Greens 7%, SNP 2%. Of course, let's be honest, the real surger here is Nigel Farage. And World by Wolf posted on X, a Tory reform merger would win a massive landslide and provide a mandate for radical change. Combined, they're at 47% in the polls. Do a deal, unite the right, transform Britain. Now, this is a position that Katie Hopkins has been increasingly advocating for, despite the fact she said that she was banned from Reform Party conference. Watch this.
What needs to happen is there needs to be a unifying strategy, and not wishing to hark back to my old world of delivering mission command inside of FTSE 100 companies, but the clear mission that would unify this effort across all these different players, all of whom I respect in different ways, to take political power by 2029 in order to restore Britain. That one line would unify all the effort that's currently being expended in a competitive way, right? All the effort right now is being expended with people beating each other up, competing for space, competing for the headline, falling out with each other, friction everywhere. It's not necessary. Take political power by 2029 in order to restore Britain.
Now, Connor, I actually have a lot of respect for the position that Katie Hopkins is taking on this, because it's very different to Tommy Robinson or Father Calvin Robinson, who's here tomorrow. She genuinely does seem to believe in the need to unite behind the right, and Farage is the best option politically. Do you agree?
So I don't know Katie, but I will say it is almost humorously ironic that she's chosen the word restoration, because without saying who is working with the Generic campaign, I happen to know that that has been the word bandied most around the office, and hence why Generic has been inspired to, as it was put in The Spectator, use the demeanour of David Cameron to sell the policies of Nigel Farage. And I think that will, unless there's a major upset tomorrow, probably serve him well in getting to the final two. Again, I don't know Katie, other than, you know, I'm quite a young man and she's been on the telly pretty much all my life. She seems perfectly nice. It won't happen. And I don't want to upset anyone who is either a fan of Katie or a fan of Nigel. But there is a zero engagement policy basically on behalf of reform with certain individuals, and that seems unshakable purely on personalities alone. It doesn't frankly matter whether or not the case can be made to them that these are your voters, they're turning out in their hundreds of thousands in a perfectly peaceful street march. It is just radioactive to them on what I can only define as a vibes basis. Quick story on that. So I obviously wasn't banned from Reform Conference, though I think after my clip did the rounds, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens next time. But I did speak to their new press officer, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to secure permission to film there, and people can see the adventures that I went on the first day of the conference on Tomlinson Talks from last week on lotusseats.com. But in order to secure that, I had chats with a few people behind reform, and the general consensus was that I'm okay. I'm brand safe. I've never done anything to upset the reform higher ups. I've got MPs that follow me, and I've chatted to James McMurdoch and Richard and that, and they're very nice chaps. However, because of some of the things that my co-host said and did, such as getting deselected as reform candidates and being very vocal about it on Twitter since, there could be basically no affiliation with the Lotus Eaters as a broader brand while I was there. I just had to be there as me. And obviously I do other things, so that was okay. So even though I and the other Lotus Eaters voted for them, even though many of the Lotus Eaters who did not have any sort of offending articles against reform make lots of criticisms in good spirits and hope that reform can get off the ground and be the party that we all want and need, as Katie Hopkins has said, they are also being punished. And so there is currently, I think, an unwillingness to engage with freely available, sympathetic media outlets, free researchers, people that will put things like all that Raikou stuff I just said on reform's priority list to deal with on day one so they don't get tripped up by the civil service, based on the fact that there's a kind of mistrust there. Based on the fact that I think some in reform are slightly older and don't really know how the internet works, and based on some personality clashes. And call me pessimistic, but for the time being, I don't see those things being resolved. But I do agree that they desperately need to be resolved because we do not have even 5 years to screw around because of just, as I've stated, with the illegal immigration situation, but also the financial situation, the way that the world is moving in terms of global conflicts and the centralization of power in international institutions. We are staring down the gun barrel of demographic, cultural, political obsolescence, and we really need reform to, or at least something in its place to get its act together and start engaging with the people that are interested in restoring this country.
Look, I have a huge amount of sympathy for Reform UK because you have seen how the mainstream media hunt them down and they are held to a completely different standard to any other political party. So, for example, in the pre-election period, you literally had Green Party candidates advocating for jihad, and that got hardly any coverage compared to a Reform UK candidate who maybe 10, 15 years ago had said something vaguely supportive of Tommy Robinson. So I do understand they've got a mainstream media issue. And on the whole, I think Reform UK are playing it sensibly and they're taking things slowly. And that's why I do cut them a lot of slack. But like you, Connor, I say I'm a critical friend, and on an issue like mass deportation today, I say, no, you've got to come around to this policy, and hopefully they will. But the risk is that they are outflanked on the right. And I want to show you what went on at the UKIP party conference over the weekend, because UKIP are saying, Katie Hopkins, come on in, Tommy Robinson, come on in. They've signed Father Calvin Robinson as their chief spokesperson, and their leader, a guy called Nick Tenchoni, who I've had on the show before, is taking a really full-throttled approach. And I think the way that he deals with these left-wing zealots outside of the conference will garner him a lot of fans. So let's have a look at this, Connor, and then you can react off the bat.
Who gave you permission to come to my conference? Who gave you permission to try and subvert democracy? The left in Britain, as usual. The far left in Britain. Every time they hate democracy, they are totalitarian. They are far left nutcases. They are not allowed here. They are not allowed here. And they are not welcome in Britain.
Connor, your response.
They really are the most hideous freaks, aren't they? I mean, look, I've met and had dinner with Nick and that before. He's a very nice chap. I think the issue with UKIP is that they are a contaminated brand ever since Farage left, and certain people mismanaged it. I like Nick very much. He's a committed Christian. He's a very honest man. I think UKIP would need a significant facelift and possibly even a rebrand to the Restoration Party if it wants to regain some of the lost political momentum that it's had over the last few years. And the other thing as well, and again, I don't wish to disparage anyone, but I think people need to know their roles. And I say this as never wanting to be an MP. You can hold me to this. I don't want to do it. I know what people are like in Parliament. I don't even drink anymore, man. I just don't want to do it, right? I think that it's worthwhile having spokespeople. It's worthwhile having researchers. It's worthwhile having people that can be able to galvanize and create a crowd, right? Again, I don't know Tommy Robinson from Adam. I've met him once. He was very polite. We just said hello. But all of his rallies have seemed perfectly cheerful, and there's been absolutely no violence, unlike the brutal Notting Hill Carnival, which is celebrated as a festival of diversity every year. And so, do I think Tommy Robinson should be placed in charge of a government department? No. Do I think that that's where he'd be best used? No. Is it fine to have him as a supporter? I think yes. Does it actually behoove movements like Reform constantly making him the boogeyman to try and make you look more palatable to a mainstream media who, frankly, would rather see Farage die in that plane crash than become the Prime Minister? I think it's a terrible idea because it only estranges your core supporters and doesn't actually attract many new people over. And I think what Nick Tenconi is actually doing pretty sensibly, that Reform should be doing, and this is something one of our mutual friends has also cottoned on to after them being bashed by the media repeatedly and having no truck with it, is why are you even engaging with the likes of the BBC and Sky? At Reform Conference, I can tell you now, all of the interviews had to go for the press office, and I tried to queue it up, and some of the MPs were just busy, and some of the emails got lost in the chain because, again, they're building the plane as it flies. But they found the time to dedicate interviews to, of course, GB News, but also Sky. Why are you chatting to Darren McCaffrey?
Playing the mainstream media game. I couldn't agree more. Look at what Trump did. He blew up the system. Farage needs to look much more closely at what Trump did in the US, because that media ecosystem is never going to see you get into power. Quite the opposite. And the great thing is, in America, certainly in Republican circles, they're destroyed. They're a busted flush. And actually, where is the power in that party? The power in that party, and obviously, I don't say this, Connor, by the way, just from a personal perspective, but the power in that party is now in the independent media. Tucker Carlson, Dan Bongino, Russell Brand, they were the people who were sitting alongside Trump at the Republican Party conference. And there's many more too, of course, Stephen Crowder and the likes. But Farage's strategy is interesting because he used his party political broadcast last night to do something really innovative. And it's very clear he wants to take the position of the Conservative Party is relevant. We're the official opposition and we are coming for Labour. So this was a political party broadcast like we've never seen in the UK before. What? But first, every day, subtle changes occur in our bodies, often going unnoticed. It's called inflammaging, a chronic low-growth inflammation that deteriorates our health as we get older. And it is more than just a sign of aging. It's a key contributor to health issues like cardiovascular disease, dementia and depression, and physical decline. It continually weakens the body's resistance, turning minor infections into severe and impacting mental health and cognitive function. Now, inflammaging significantly diminishes both quality of life and independence. Proper diet, exercise and sleep can only get you so far. So that's why I take Clean Being by Verso. It contains ingredients targeted to fight off and help prevent inflammaging. Research shows that these ingredients clean out damaged cells in the body that affect healthy cells, reduce inflammation, protect against oxidative stress, and improve conditions like cardiovascular diseases and neurological conditions. After taking Clean Bean for some time, on a personal level, I've noticed less joint pain, increased energy, better mood, and clearer skin. I can think better, I don't get as sick as I did before, and these are all benefits of reduced inflammation. Plus, Verso ensures transparency and quality by publishing third-party testing results for each batch they produce so you know you're getting exactly what you pay for. So click the link in the description on YouTube or Rumble, or head on over to buy.ver.so and use the coupon code Outspoken at checkout to save 15% on your first order. We'll just repeat the address now, buy.ver.so/Outspoken. Use the coupon code Outspoken for a big 15% off discount. The link is in the show notes.
From the people that sold the gold, we bring you Labour's Britain. Featuring shivering grandparents with no winter fuel allowance, free clothing, glasses, accommodation, and tickets, as long as you're a Labour MP. Over 11,000 illegal migrant crossings and counting. And trade unions getting every pay rise they ever asked for, whilst taxes rise for everyone else. Labour's Britain, starring Free Gear Keir, Robbing Rachel, Red Ed, and Well-Dressed Angela. Produced by Lord Ali, in association with the trade unions. Labour's Britain.
Do you like Connor?
No. And the reason I don't is because it doesn't speak to me. What actually that does is much like what the Reform Conference did. It consolidates its over 50 vote. And that's fine. That's good. Given the age of the Conservative Party voter on average at the last election was 63, there are going to be a lot of disaffected Tories and Labour voters who are up for grabs for reform at the next election. That's excellent. But it doesn't strike a tone of the youthful exuberance that the party should be attracting, because reform was joint first with Labour among young men, and all of the parties promising mass deportations on the continent, the Freedom Party in Austria, the AfD in Germany, the Swedish Democrats, Front National in France, they are leading among young people, and they are gaining ground despite the very obstructive European EU parliamentary system and national systems, where all of the left-wing and so-called centrist parties are allying against them. Well, they're just winning outright majorities because the youngest people are the least likely to be concerned that the mainstream media are calling something racist, because they're not watching the mainstream media. And for all of our lives, everything has been racist. So the boys cry wolf too many times. So reform should be speaking to them as well as their over 50s audience. What Trump is doing is that strategy. He's doing a high-low strategy. The high strategy is his rallies. It gets the broadest possible coalition. He has blacks and Latinos for Trump there. Everyone's dancing along to cheesy music like YMCA, Trump himself included. It's a great and jubilant atmosphere. But you don't see a lot of really young people there. What you do see when he goes to a college campus is all of the young frat guys really like Trump. And it's because he's been on Theo Von's podcast. It's because all of the new Democrats that have coalesced around him have been friends of Joe Rogan. It's because he's the topic of many memes. And look, Farage did a little bit of that with TikTok, but refusing to engage with dissident media outlets or actively alienating the inventive anonymous Twitter accounts who are pushing for more immigration restriction, who can make some really inventive marketing materials that caters to my generation, will lose you that constituency who is up for grabs. And that constituency, by the way, is the sizable share of the sofa voter. This is something that the Policy Exchange released a report on a few months ago now. It's that 4.8 million voters will be up for grabs, especially in the north at the next election. And the sofa voter is not most likely to be a boomer. They are most likely to be young, northern, non-university graduates. And lots of them will be amenable to reform as long as you get the message out there. And the thing is, they aren't watching Ofcom regulated broadcast media. And funnily enough, increasingly, neither of the boomers, because lots of people are cancelling the TV license fees. So you really have to engage with non-Ofcom regulated, sympathetic, long-form podcasts and media shows like yours and mine, Dan. And what needs to be done there is there needs to be a trust established. Because at the moment, this is the final thing I'll say, what I'm seeing from reform is that some among reform are trying to astroturf their own activist faces. There are some people who have gained a massive following in the last few days on Twitter, who are on reform's payroll. And they have not been able to gain an organic audience on their own. They post banal things. They don't do their own research. And whereas there are, let's say, popular voices among my generation who are more than happy to give reform a sympathetic ear, there is no trust established there. What reform need to do is they need to reach out and see what audience they can cultivate, whether that's among the Hopkins crowd, whether that's among the likes of you and me, rather than try and manufacture their own people, because it just won't work.
No, indeed. And also, just don't play within a system that wants to destroy you, which is currently what they're doing. But I still have a bit of faith. I'm going to give them a bit of time. That's where I stand on it. Critical friend, because I still believe that Farage is our best hope to be Prime Minister in 2029, and it's incredibly, incredibly important. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and I've put some of the links in the show notes below this video. Keep watching our Outspoken clips to support this independent news venture with no spin, no bias, and no censorship, unlike the MSM. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.